if somehow I become famous and a household name and folks like me and I get blessed to do what I want to do, things like that, if things work out for me, put this in bold on my will. Don't make me a hologram, please. That's all I'm asking. Did you watch the Field of Dreams game last night? Okay, we're moving on. Let's talk about the Brewers now. You're locked on.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, happy Friday, happy weekend, everybody. I'm Dominic Cotroneo. This is Locked On Brewers, your only daily podcast dedicated to the Brew Crew all season long. All of our episodes are here wherever you get your podcasts. It's free and available every day, Monday through Friday, and on YouTube as well, where we post a video version of this as well. The weekend is here. Big 3-game set coming up with those Cardinals. First game tonight is at 7:15 on Bally Sports Wisconsin. Coverage begins at 6:30 from the studio. Man, this is big, and we're going to get into our reactions of the series, or the preview of the series coming up and what to expect and what to be looking out for. But we're also going to talk about the mailbag questions that you guys brought in. Got a good handful here, and one of these I think I can spend an entire segment on. So we're going to get to the mailbag here in just a second. I want to remind everybody that today's episode is actually brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for everything. More odds, more props, and more lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. I'm the statistician for Bally Sports Wisconsin. I'll be in the studio with all the news and numbers and notes that the crew wants to know about on the telecast. Can't wait to be working again this weekend with the Brew Crew, and what a week it was against the Rays. They sweep the season series 4-0, whereas the Cardinals just lost 2 out of 3 in Colorado. Now, let's also remember, the Brewers still are yet to go to Colorado. It's a hard place to pitch. We saw Miles Michaelis get roughed up on Monday night. Saw struggles yesterday by Genesis Cabrera in the 7th inning, a 6-run 7th inning for the Rockies. Brewers still have that on their schedule, so it's always tough to pitch there. Keep that in mind, so don't be dancing around and parading about that series loss for the Cardinals against a team like the Rockies, given the Brewers almost swept them in a 4-game series. We're not doing that because it is a hard place to play. Secondly, what we're also not going to do, if the Brewers lose this series 2-1 or even get swept 0-3, the season's not over. Okay, we're not overreacting in either direction. We're going to learn a lot about what this team's got, okay, and its gumption and its perseverance. There's still 50 games to go, obviously, 52 games to go, and there'll be 49 to go after this weekend. There will be still time to make up any sort of deficit or any time to build on a lead that you could build as well. So you're a half game up right now, heading into today's series, starting with those Cardinals, which means at series end, whoever wins the series is going to be a half game up. So it's really not even a real margin per se. It's still going to be just a small semantics of whoever's going to be. However you sweep, though, you're up 1.5 games, and things get interesting from there. We're not going to overreact in either direction of what happens this weekend. We'll have a full reaction podcast coming Monday morning for you. It's going to be a fun weekend. I'm really looking forward to some playoff atmosphere baseball. Yes, it'll be at Busch Stadium, but it should be rocking. And what better is it to be a silencer, at a rocking ballpark like that, facing a really good team in the Cardinals and their voodoo magic that they got going on? Buckle up. This should be a whole lot of fun this weekend. Looking around the league here as we get ready for a Friday standings update, I was talking about the Field of Dreams game. At the time of recording, it's 4-2. Cubs leading in the top of the 8th inning. Looks like they're going to hang on in that one. But looking at the standings right now, since neither of those teams really matter in the standings, of course, here in the National League, Mets, Cardinals, Dodgers are the division leaders. Dodgers have won 10 in a row, by the way. They were off yesterday. The Dodgers are 77-33. Brewers will see them starting on Monday back at American Family Field. That's going to be crazy hard. Then the Mets are 73-39. They're a really darn good team. Daniel Vogelbach, shout out to him. Shout out to old friend Eduardo Escobar over there too. They're getting ready to take on the Phillies, who are suddenly re-energized right now. They got shut out yesterday, though, by the Marlins, but the Phillies are right there in the wild card race. They are currently in the second wild card, a half game up on the Padres and a 1.5 games up on the Brewers. As we talked about in yesterday's show, the wild card race is going to be 3 teams fighting for 2 spots. The team that's in second in the NL West, the team that's in third in the NL East, and the team that's in second in the Central. Those are the teams that are going to be fighting for this. I think the Giants are going to continue to free fall. They're now 3 games under 500. I don't think they're going to be a factor coming in down the stretch here. So when I look at Philly, they're rolling. San Diego's trying to figure out what they are right now. They haven't played super great since acquiring Soto and acquiring Drury and the crazy deal and Josh Bell that they got and all that. Atlanta is, I think, better than their record indicates. The fact that they're so far back in the East is kind of shocking to me. The fact that they're 7 games back is kind of wild, but the Mets handed it to them over the weekend last week in Queens, so maybe they are who we thought they were, and they just need to get in and move on because as it stands right now, so if the playoffs started today, you'd look at the number 1 seed being the Dodgers. They would match up with the wild card series, which would be either Atlanta or Philly if it started today, moving on to face them in the divisional series, which means the Mets, the 2 seed, would get the winner of the Cardinals-Padres series. So let's slide in the Brewers if they end up claiming the Central, and if it is the Padres in that final playoff spot, the Brewers will be hosting the Padres. Oh my God. The Brewers will be hosting the Padres in a 3-game series to then have the right to go play the 2 seed in the New York Mets. There's 52 games to go, but that actually sounds kind of tasty if you ask me. That would be wild and fun and dangerous, but yeah, I mean, sign me up. The NL playoffs are going to be so awesome this year. All I care about in the American League is the Mariners. I want the Mariners to make the playoffs so freaking bad. And then on top of that, I think we all know we're bound for Yankees, Astros in the ALCS. But the way things look in the American League, in case you were wondering, Cleveland's actually still hanging on to their lead in the American League Central right now. And they're fighting off Minnesota, and they're fighting off Chicago. I mean, the White Sox are still 500, guys. They keep saying, oh, let us get healthy, let us get healthy. Oh, they're healthy now. You got Dylan Cease, a Cy Young candidate. Get it together, guys. Come on, Tony. But looking at the Central in the American League, Cleveland's up 1.5 games on Minnesota, and they're up 3.5 games on the White Sox. So the White Sox have their work cut out for them right now. Of course, the Yankees are the first-place team in the East, but the Astros currently have the better record by just a half game. They're 72-41, and the Astros have the season-long tiebreaker over the Yankees. Keep that in mind in the American League side. And then the wild card teams are currently Toronto as the first wild card or the 4 seed, Seattle as the 5 seed, Tampa Bay as the 6 seed, but only a half game up on Baltimore and only a game up on Minnesota. And then it's moot because Chicago is 3 games back, but they would have to jump Minnesota, which means maybe they're in the Central. The Central is going to be weird in the American League, but Tampa Bay is still technically in the playoffs right now, 6 games above 500. Seattle's 1.5 games up on them, and Baltimore is only a half game back. Holy cow. Baltimore did lose yesterday to the Red Sox. That's going to be fun for the American League drama as far as wild card goes because there's more players involved in that wild card race as opposed to the National League. That's just a quick little standings update. I want to get to this mailbag now, and one of this first questions is going to take me an entire segment to answer. Before we do that, take a quick breather, tell you about the sponsor that we told you about yesterday in the liver health formula presented by Pure Health Research. If you're somebody that is struggling potentially with digestive issues, or if you're feeling tired and sluggish all the time, or you're struggling with having a bloated belly, there's a good chance you might have an overworked liver. Don't make Wisconsin jokes out of that. This is something actually that could be happening to you. Thanks to diets and high processed foods and exposures to thousands of harmful toxins, the liver is working extra hard for you to make sure your body's ready to go. You need to cleanse and gently detoxify your liver. And that's where the liver health formula from Pure Health Research can help. This formula combines 8 powerful nutrients such as turmeric, beetroot, and artichoke extract to gently detoxify your liver. And you can restore comfortable and regular digestion. You can reduce belly bloating. And you can even have days with a little more energy happening right now. As a listener of our show, you can try the Liver Health Formula risk-free today. And you'll get a free bottle of Curb Fit with your order. Curb Fit is a safe, all-natural appetite suppressant, making it easier to say no to some of those naughty foods or those guilty pleasures you may have sitting in your pantry right now. Go to getliverhelp.com/MLB to learn more. Again, that's getliverhelp.com/MLB to try Liver Health Formula completely risk-free. Mailbag. Let's talk about it. This first question is going to take me a while to answer, so we're just going to spend this whole segment talking about injury updates and what we know about the way things are looking right now for the Brew Crew. This question came from Matthew. What do the players' returns coming back from the IL mean for our roster, i.e. players getting set down and moved and whatnot? Great question. We've talked about in the last couple of days that it seems like the Brewers are going to use the maximum amount of time that they can on Justin Topa's and Jake Cousins' rehab assignments. Remember, you get 30 days as a pitcher for a rehab assignment while you're down in the minor leagues. When you look at Jake Cousins, he will be eligible, or at least at his maximum, I should say, to be finished with his rehab assignment on August 26th. And Justin Topa will be finished on August 22nd. The way I look at it with Topa, looking at his numbers right now, in AAA, he's thrown a little over 8 innings. He's allowed 10 hits, 4 runs, 5 walks, 7 strikeouts. I don't see him fitting into this bullpen right now, especially with a guy like Trevor Rosenthal on the way back. I feel like they're going to option Justin Topa. He still has all 3 of his option years remaining. He spent the entire year on the 60-day IL. So yeah, you burn an option year for only a month of the season, but it makes the most sense to keep him in the organization, have him go through the offseason healthy finally, and then have him come back still in the 40-man next spring training if he can audition for the bullpen role. So that's one guy I think that's going to be optioned when he is finally coming off the injured list. However, something to keep in mind is he is on the 60-day IL, which means he would need to be added to the 40-man roster. More on that in a second. Jake Cousins, also on the 60-man, but the Brewers are currently 60-day IL, but the Brewers are currently carrying 39 guys on the 40-man roster. So there could be room for Cousins if he wanted to come right back onto the 40-man roster, which will be A-okay with him for the Brewers to jump him in and get him ready to go into the rotation. And keep in mind, Trevor Rosenthal is already on the 40-man roster. Okay, he's just on the 15-day IL. So there's not like when he gets activated, he needs to be added to the 40-man. No, that's already happened. He is on the 40-man. That was a straight-up change. It's all that was part of the DFAs with Lamet and the DFAs with Severino. So he's fine in that regard. But again, Cousins would need to be re-added to the roster. Another guy that's on his way back soon, actually pitched yesterday on a rehab assignment, was Adrian Hauser. 3 innings, 1 unearned run, no hits, but 3 walks and 4 strikeouts. It was his second rehab outing so far. Now, the Brewers only had 2 rehab outings for Freddie Peralta, and they had him come in and have kind of condensed his pitch count in his first 2 outings since coming back to the big leagues. I don't know if they're going to do that with Adrian Hauser, given time. It's kind of on their side in this situation, but with yesterday's off day, they're not about to hit a really tough stretch of games without an off day. So they have another off day in 2 weeks, but they're going to play 31 games in the next 31 days because of that doubleheader coming up on September 8th against the Giants. So they lose an off day in that regard. They have an off day next in 2 Thursdays, August 25th, but then they won't have another off day until September 12th, which is a Monday. It's going to get tough, and they're going to, after that off day in 2 weeks, they're going to play 18 games in 17 days, so it's going to be a grind. I think they're looking at Hauser to rejoin the rotation at some point there. Maybe only 1 more, but I imagine they're going to want 2 more rotations, turnarounds for Adrian Hauser while he's on his way back to make sure he's good to go to give length. And Hauser's only on the 15-day IL, so he's already on the 40-man roster. He's good to jump right back in. Another pitcher, Trevor Rosenthal, we haven't heard much lately. Maybe we'll learn more this weekend against the Cardinals, but the Brewers, according to Adam McCalvy, are targeting a late August return for Trevor Rosenthal. And to reiterate, he is already on the 40-man roster. So no corresponding move to take a guy off the roster to get him on. Just need to activate him to the active roster of 26 guys. Jace Peterson, he's taking ground balls right now. He's playing catch, but he hasn't swung the bat yet. Maybe early September when the rosters expand, he could be returning. Don't know if they're going to send him on a rehab assignment yet, but it's still too soon to tell of how long he will be out from his injection that he had a couple of weeks ago to try to get that left elbow or to get that right elbow good to go here in the home stretch. One more guy I think you might have forgotten about, J.C. Mejia. J.C. Mejia, 80-game suspension on the restricted list. So that's one guy not on the 40-man roster right now. He's actually pitching in the minor leagues right now. He's on a rehab assignment. He's eligible to come off of his suspension a week from yesterday. So Thursday, August 18th will be his first day eligible after his 80 games are up. He's pitched well in the minor leagues, by the way. 13 in the third innings, just 1 run allowed, 6 walks, but 15 strikeouts. The Brewers did use their last option year on him this year. So he's already been optioned this season, which means if they're going to add him back to the 40-man roster, I doubt he's going to be on the active roster, which means they would option him back to Nashville for AAA to try to keep him in the organization and kick that can down the road to see that, hey, he stays in the organization for the offseason, and maybe he comes back for next spring training that the Brewers would then have to decide, well, is he going to be DFA'd because he won't be able to be optioned in 2023 spring training, or will he be traded? That kind of stuff all matters for next season. I don't see Mejia coming back to the active roster, but don't forget about him. He's active to come off. He's eligible to come off the injured list or the restricted list in 6 days. Be intrigued when you see that headline, whatever happens. As far as guys that could be sent down, it's going to be weird because the first candidate is obviously Jason Alexander, who hasn't really pitched since he returned from AAA. But aside from that, there's really not much room in this rotation and in this bullpen to send any more pitchers down, which is why I have the feeling that the Brewers are trying to hang on for dear life until September 1st, when the roster expands to 28 players. But you still are capped at a maximum of 14 pitchers. The way I see it is, do they roll with a 6-man rotation again for the final month of the season when Hauser returns and you want to keep Ashby in this rotation? Or do you throw Ashby in the bullpen, have to make another difficult move out of that bullpen, and figure out what you want? Because you'll be even more crowded in September. Yes, you get one more pitcher in the bullpen, but you're looking at Rosenthal returning, and I imagine they're going to want to use Jake Cousins if he's healthy and available. And the numbers he's put up, 8 strikeouts in 5 innings and only 3 walks allowed so far in AAA. I imagine they're going to want to use Jake Cousins. And that stuff's coming to the forefront very soon. And they're trying to hold on till September 1. They may not get the opportunity to do so. It may buck its head a little sooner than the Brewers want to, but those are just a few things to keep in mind. 28-man roster, you can still only have a maximum of 14 pitchers in September and October, which will give them a little more flexibility. And that's also a reminder that if Jace Peterson does return before the end of August, if they do decide to bring him back, and by the way, Omar Narvaez, he was running on Sunday, but there's still no quite a timetable yet for him to return, for Victor Caratini, who's about to take a ton of days here coming up behind the plate. Mario Feliciano still has not started yet for the Brewers, and I doubt he's going to start this weekend against the Cardinals. It's going to be tough. So if you do see Keston here get optioned again when Jace returns, just remember that Keston will be the first guy they call back when the rosters expand back to 28 players. So don't overreact if that is the case, only if Jace returns by the end of August. Does that all that make sense? I hope it does. That's a big, heavy injury update. A lot went down there, but the Brewers actually do have a little bit of depth and some options to play with here as they get ready for the stretch run here. That was a big, heavy injury segment, but the big thing to know, the most likely guy to come onto the 40-man roster and needs to be added to the active roster is Jake Cousins. A guy that's already on the 40-man roster but needs to be added to the active roster is Trevor Rosenthal. And then Jace Peterson and Omar Narvaez, you'll see when that. When Omar comes back, Feliciano goes back down to the minor leagues. And then when Jace comes back, it's probably Keston going back down, and then he'll come right back up first week of September. That's how I see it. Cool? Cool. A few more fun questions to get to here before we wrap things up. Before we get there, tell you about our presenting sponsor once again, BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. You can find all your favorite sporting events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews and news of every single league. The PGA Tour is in its playoff run right now. Obviously, the NFL just began its preseason. College football is right around the corner. Esports, combat sports, you name it, BetOnline has got it. You can head to BetOnline today or use your phone to get there to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline is where the game starts. We're also brought to you by Blue Nile. If you're ready to pop the question, if you're celebrating a big moment, a birthday coming up, an anniversary, whatever it may be, you can find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. They've got the anniversary sale happening right now. Up to 40% off on fine jewelry pieces, 25% on engagement ring settings. Now is the perfect time to jump into the fine jewelry game with Blue Nile. If you're having trouble choosing, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7 via phone or via chat to help you find a memorable gift at any budget. And that budget matters because they have the diamond price guarantee. You can contact Blue Nile and you can compare a competitor's diamond and their price to Blue Nile's price. And in most cases, Blue Nile can actually meet or beat the price of the competitor. And even if it's not perfect, there's no problem. There's a 100% satisfaction guarantee. You can shop stress-free with guaranteed free shipping and returns, and they guarantee service and repair for life on whatever piece you may be buying. So go to BlueNile.com today to shop stress-free and find your forever piece and make your moment sparkle with BlueNile.com. Finally, a few more fun questions here. First one comes from MVP Nacho. Tacos or nachos? Sorry, MVP Nachos. Tacos. Al pastor con piña with a little bit of pineapple. Throw the cilantro and the onions on there. Boom. That's my favorite kind of taco. And there are some good street taco places here in Milwaukee, but being a West Coast guy, I'll be in LA in a few weeks, hopefully, and I cannot stress how good it is just be able to get a taco at any day. It's any hour of the day. Love that about the West Coast, and love that about Phoenix and Los Angeles and Texas. Just give me tacos all day long. The next fun question that we got to was, if the Brewers season was a TV show or a movie, what would it be, and what would be the theme song? You know, my gut told me it was like Breaking Bad, only recently because it's like a hard decision made for Walter White, right? Like, you know, he's diagnosed with cancer and he has to figure out how to make money and pay for the treatment. And I'm not saying that the Brewers are selling drugs, but, you know, maybe David Stearns is in the rock between a hard place of like, do I trade Josh Hader now, or do I wait for the offseason? The team's good, team's different. That's kind of what I felt initially, but then I realized it's just Ted Lasso. It's just Ted Lasso. And it's not like a disconnect between the ownership trying to spite ex-husband and all that. If you haven't watched Ted Lasso, by the way, what are you waiting for? It's Major League with soccer, but better. It's great. I love it. Ted Lasso, I think, makes the most sense, but Craig Counsell's obviously not as plucky as Ted Lasso, Jason Sudeikis is. But that came to mind. And as far as the theme song, I mean, how can you pick anything other than Roll Out the Barrel? But I would say, I mean, Running Up That Hill has been everywhere on social media these days. Let's just say Running Up That Hill. It's been everywhere. You can't escape it right now. Fun little question. Couple other baseball questions here before we get ready to wrap up on this Mailbag Friday episode. Who is going to be the X-Factor down the stretch? This is a good question. I'm going to give two answers. First of all, the bullpen. That's my first X-Factor down the stretch. We talk about Devin Williams. He's not what I'm concerned about as far as X-Factor. I believe that dude can be a closer. What I look at is everybody else. Is Brad Boxberger going to break out of his slump? Is Craig Counsell going to use him in maybe earlier innings as opposed to the 7th or the 8th inning? Is Trevor Gott going to step up? Is Hobie Milner going to continue to be the Brewers MVP this season? And I'm not exaggerating. I think Hobie Milner is the Brewers MVP right now. And I look at, will Trevor Rosenthal be healthy enough to pitch well for the Brewers in meaningful innings? Will Brent Suter only pitch in low-leverage situations, or will he have to come in for situational lefties? Will Jake Cousins come back healthy? What will the Brewers' bullpen look like 6, 7, 8 before they ideally hand Devin the ball in the 9th? Matt Bush as well, who got a save this last week. There are a lot of suddenly unknowns about the bullpen. There's a lot of talent in the bullpen, but there are some unknowns. So that's my first X factor. And the second X factor is an obvious choice. It's Willy Adames. He's had a terrible second half so far. He's got a 265 on base in the second half. He's striking out a ton. He's not walking. He's been hyper-aggressive on first pitches, as he usually is. But he obviously got the walk-off on Wednesday, but aside from that, he had been really cold over the last few days. He's got 3 homers in the second half. But Willie's going to be the X factor because he's still batting second, and with Yelich playing better ahead of him, it's giving him opportunities to keep the line moving and to keep things going for Rowdy batting behind him, or if it's Renfroe, or if it's McCutchen, or if it's Brasso against a lefty. Willie's in a really good spot in the lineup right now. He just hasn't quite been producing like the Brewers expected him to. So Willie is my offensive X factor moving forward down the stretch here. That was a good question. Who's the next prospect to be called up? I think this is pretty easy answer, but also I don't know if there's another prospect that's going to be called up. But Uri Ruiz, it makes the most sense. He's a center fielder. Jonathan Davis probably isn't going to play much here down the stretch. It would make most sense for him to come up, be the backup for Tyrone Taylor. He could be a base runner, a pinch runner as well. Looking at his numbers, he's back to a much more normal hitting environment. I try to warn y'all when you saw his AAA and AA numbers that he was hitting the ball hard, obviously, but both San Antonio and El Paso are hitters' paradises. Imagine playing all of your games in Cincinnati or all of your games with Wrigley with the wind blowing out. So those are good hitters' leagues. Now coming to AAA and coming to Nashville, more of a pitchers-heavy league, pitchers' side of things in the division. So his average right now, still just 6 for 23. That's a 261 average. He does have a pair of doubles of those 6 hits. He's ironically 0 for 2 in stolen bases, which I found kind of odd right now. But I think Ruiz would be the next prospect called up, and he is on the 40-man roster since he was on the 40-man when he was acquired in that Josh Hader trade. So I think Ruiz is the next prospect called up if another prospect is called up. I think the Brewers are going to keep rolling with Tyrone for now, and then maybe, depending on how Jace is feeling and things of that nature, maybe they bring up Ruiz when the roster's expanded and send Jonathan Davis back down. That could be a candidate of things to happen. Just keep that in mind moving forward because it's a crowded outfield right now in Nashville with Mitchell and Frelick and Weimer down there too. So it's pretty crowded in Nashville. Last question as we get ready to wrap up this episode. With the current series and stretch coming up being so difficult, what's more important, this stretch or the final 20 of 26 at home? Good question. I talked about how big this stretch is. So Cardinals starting today, 4 games with the Dodgers next week, 3 games in Wrigley next week, then 3 more against the Dodgers in 2 weeks, and then 3 more against the Cubs coming back from Dodger Stadium here at American Family Field. It's a big stretch coming up. 7 of your next 10 games are against the Dodgers, or 7 of the next 12 games are against the Dodgers. Or 13 games are against the Dodgers, and then the Cardinals are in there too. So I don't want to hesitate, or I don't want to overstate this coming stretch, because when I look at those final 20 of 26 at home, there's still quality opponents in there. You still got the Yankees in there. You still got the Mets in there. The Reds clearly have the Brewers' number right now. You'll see them 6 times in that stretch. You'll also see the Cardinals 4 times in those 26 games. That's going to be big. And that final homestand, you'll see the Diamondbacks to close the season, and you'll see the Marlins for 4 games, which means you're probably going to see Sandy Alcantara. You're probably going to see Pablo Lopez. And there's a good chance with the Diamondbacks, you're going to see Zach Gallen or Merrill Kelly, 2 of their aces. It's not going to be easy down the stretch. And as we talked about in yesterday's pod, for teams that are out of the playoffs, they love being spoiler in September. It's not going to be easy. So I think the most important stretch is those final 26 games, which is, in about a month's time. I think those final 20 of 26 at home, yes, it's nice that they're at home, but it's still quality opponents. It's not going to be easy. I looked at that stretch being more important because the Brewers aren't expecting to win series from the Dodgers, right? You got 7 games against the Dodgers. As I said yesterday, you would be thrilled going 3-4. Realistically, you're probably going to go 2-5 because they're that good. I'm not trying to hedge my bets or anything. I'm just being realistic because Dodgers are really freaking good, and they're getting healthier. That's just my opinion. I think the final stretch will be more important than this coming 15, 18 games or so. Cool? Cool. That works for me. Again, Monday, full reaction pod for the Cardinals series this weekend. Hope to have a guest lined up for that. More on that coming soon. And then hope you tune in. Valley Sports Wisconsin. We'll be on the Tweeter and chatting about it. And let's have some fun. Big news coming next week, too. I know I've teased this for a few times, but I think you're going to like the news that we got coming next week as far as the show goes. Big stuff coming. Thanks, everybody who's listened. It's been a fun week. Back to normal. Enjoy your weekend. Tune in on Valley Sports Wisconsin tonight, 6:30 pregame coverage, 7:15 first pitch. Brew Crew and Redbirds. Should be fun. My name's Dominic Cotroneo. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep on swinging.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.